the period of 400 years in America, had been deprived of any aggressive thoughts. Even if you show aggressive thoughts before the white man, he would erase you, set you apart from the others as a villain. So, but I felt that in order for Malcolm, after my father's death and his mother's having gone to a hospital, I felt that it was my duty to stimulate his arrogance, stimulate his impulsiveness. Let him feel that life was the life that God gave him, belonged to him. He didn't have to pay homage to anyone. This is how I guided him.
That's my shit right here. Say what, that's my shit right here. Welcome back to another episode of Road to William. Today it's still Women's History Month, still Women's Month. So we're celebrating as many individuals, as many women as we can. And today we're gonna focus on Malcolm X's daughter. Today we're gonna focus on Malcolm X's daughter, Adala Shabaz. It's 1992. Let's get into this video.
Dallas and yes. I'll try to get the word. Well, I don't know anybody that high up, but I met one of your Dallas commissioners who invited me there to speak John Wiley Prize. Oh, yes. Ms. Shabaz, I must begin by asking you please to pronounce your first name for us. My first name is pronounced Attila. Attila? Not Attila. No, certainly not. Not Ayatollah. I get it all. Attila. The autobiography has my name misspelled, so people think I've changed it. How is it spelled then? Spelled like Attila, so people think they're doing me a favor by correcting me when I say my name is Attila. But I'm one of those traditional old-fashioned people that always goes by last name as I refer to others, whether they're little kids or big kids, or whether they're the secretary on a production or the executive producer. I like last names, origins, and things like that. How do you remember your father? As my first friend. My mother was my first love. My father was my first best friend. Is there any one moment of a time that you had with him? No, I mean, for me, it's my life, so that there are many moments. There are funny moments. There are consoling moments. There are moments where, when I was about 4 years old and I had a crush on Frederick Douglass, I had a series of people I was learning about. And Frederick Douglass, really moved me. And I told my father I wanted to marry him. And he said, oh, but he's no longer with us. And I think he could really see that I was devastated, that my life was not going to incorporate Frederick Douglass. And he started to bring in other stories and books about this person, and it brought him back to life. My father was a pal, and it's something that I'm glad to have had in reflection because it keeps me company. How old were you when he died? I was in grade school. So, as you see the film now, it must be quite devastating for you in some ways, isn't it? No, it hasn't been devastating yet. I don't know what it'll be like when I see it screening, because now that we're over a big hump, I mean, in the making of the film, there's a lot to unleash and let go of, and seatbelts don't have to be on, and the producer director in me can sit aside while I watch a creative development on screen. All of those things will probably be different next week when we see the screening. The screening of the premiere is on my birthday, so suddenly that's like a quiet whisper of happy birthday from my father. So a lot of other things may come out. I don't know yet, but when it's a life that you live every day with people's impressions all the time, devastating would be too painful for me if I was to live like that. If I was to function with the perceptions that was perpetuated about my father over the 25 of these 27 years, I'd live with an ache. I'd be despondent, and I'm not. So there's so much more to be proud of, happy for, in terms of who Malcolm Shabazz is, whether the public knew it or not. Are you saying that you haven't actually seen? No, I've seen the whole film twice. Oh, okay. But it's a different kind of travel for me. When you go see a film. For me, I have to undo parts of myself. I have to surrender myself on screen. Parts of my own personal story, meaning my father's telling. I have to dismiss the details that are details to me that are important, that you want to insert that aren't. Those kinds of things. Put those things aside. And overall, it's a compelling movie that motivates people. And my details aren't your details. So that what I'm looking for in the specific may not be as essential. It's still my detail. Why do you think your father was killed? Because he knew a lot. I think, but my father's on a list of many people who you wonder why their hope or their direction or their inspiration was snuffed out. Dr. King, the Kennedy brothers, Medgar Evers, people whose names you don't know, who were community leaders. These just happened to be people who had focus on them, but there were many people who were taken away. Music lyrics in the 60s and 70s that were suggestive, yet bonding. When we listen to them now, we consider them legendary. We celebrate Bob Dylan, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. There was a time when the government was not ready to share all of that, and we as a public didn't think we were entitled. So we surrendered and we tried to move with the mainstream. And there are a lot of people who say they thought it, but they let him say it. Or they heard it and they moved over here, but they would peek in every now and then, so as not to ruffle the feathers. And we have felt that we are not in the place to ruffle the feathers on our own behalf. At the time it happened, did you have the same feelings? At the time what happened? At the time that your father died, did you have the same feelings? Such as? That you've just expressed. I miss my daddy. I wasn't thinking from the public's perspective. I'm not generally governed by the public's perspective at all. If I was, it would take me too long to have a sense of myself and the circumstances. And I might have grown up bitter. But no, at that time, all I wanted was my father. That's who I knew, my father. And to grow up and realize that your father did not die in an accident and it was not an illness, but that he was the victim of premeditated murder. You know that there is an energy out there that is capable of taking a life without even knowing who it was they killed. And did you as a family fear for the rest of your lives? There wasn't anything voiced, but I know for my mother, that you always know that can happen. I know that as a child, I knew it can happen. When you see it, it becomes your truth. And you know that there are people who are capable of interfering and devaluing one's life. Ms. Shabaz, I thank you very much for your time today. Thank you. And I must tell you that I was so inspired and so moved coming out of the picture last night. I'm glad to hear that. And I do hope that people will make a point to see this picture. Thank you for saying that. I was just good. Yeah, it really was. I get the words. Well, I don't know anybody that high up, but I met one of your Dallas commissioners who invited me there to speak. John Williams. Oh, yes. Ms. Shabaz, I must begin by asking you please to pronounce your first name for us. My first name is pronounced Attila. Attila? Not Attila.
Reppin' the WNBA, baby. Ayy. Put your W's up, put your W's up, put your W's up. BG is free, back with the Mercury.
Mrs. Collins. Malcolm was born the way he was. He was born, in fact, we waited for Malcolm's birth. We were of the superstitious tribe of Africa, the Watusis, and we believed that the seventh child came with endowed with certain rights that would surpass other children of that family. So when he was born, we expected great things of Malcolm. I don't know if this influenced him, the fact that his family put him in a certain category. My father, in particular, was concerned with him after he was born because he was very fair, and he felt that this would be a hindrance to us applying ourselves to him, because people at that time put a lot of stock on black and yellow and colors, you know what I mean? So much of what Malcolm would have gotten from the family had he been born black. He didn't get it because we didn't want to make a difference in the white child over the black ones.
So where did he get it, say in his late teens, in his early 20s?
Malcolm lived with me from 12 until he went to prison. I had a chance to discipline Malcolm in prison. Malcolm was an aggressive young boy. I admired it. I stimulated it. I felt that a black young man, over the period of 400 years in America, had been deprived of any aggressive thoughts. Even if you show aggressive thoughts before the white man, he would erase you, set you apart from the others as a villain. So, but I felt that in order for Malcolm, after my father's death and his mother's having gone to a hospital, I felt that it was my duty to stimulate his arrogance, stimulate his impulsiveness. Let him feel that life was the life that God gave him, belonged to him. He didn't have to pay homage to anyone. This is how I guided him.
What kinds of influences do you think being in prison had upon him? What kind of effect?
In prison, I was able to really direct him into accepting facts as a guideline to life, not an illusion, something that's dramatized. Prison is real. If a God sees fit to throw you in solitary confinement, this is for real. Malcolm was able to see this and accept life from a realistic point of view. I think all of the illusions that he may have adopted in his youth from environment, I think he lost it in prison. I think he really saw life for real. And this was one of the most valuable assets that Malcolm did acquire in life, was courage, a matter of fact, to accept life from a realistic point of view. Nothing dramatized would interest Malcolm, nothing.
He became involved with the Muslims while he was in prison.
Yes, through my brother Reginald, he became involved with the Black Muslims. And the Black Muslim Islam, Elijah Muhammad gave him a chance to excel. Had not it been for Elijah Muhammad, I would have had to find possibly another field to project him through. But Islam, as it was then in a small, it was a very small thing at that time. And this gave Malcolm a chance to really excel and build the Nation of Islam. Much of the Nation of Islam is Malcolm.
Do you feel that being in the Muslims had a profound effect on Malcolm?
To some degree. It gave him a chance, as I said before, to recognize the needs of the masses of people. It also gave him a chance to recognize the lack of knowledge the masses contain. It also gave him a chance to recognize the fact that Black people are their own worst enemies.
In what ways do you think Black people are their own worst enemies?
We don't realize, many of us, that we are free. If we realize this word freedom and recognize it for what it means and watch the other people on earth exercise freedom, then we would not sing a song, "We shall overcome," and walk up and down roads and beg for this and want poverty programs and all this type of thing. We would know that our ability to care for another race would give us more ability to care for our own needs, and we don't provide for ourselves.
Was Malcolm nonviolent, in your estimation?
Now, from my estimation, no man is nonviolent, no man is violent. Malcolm believed, as a man should believe, that if you strike him, it was his duty as a man to strike you back.
What kind of an effect did Malcolm have on you?
On me, I believe the effect he had on me was to see him grow from childhood into a dynamic figure, a man with an understanding of man and himself and life in itself. On me, he was to me like Jesus is to most Christians. I can imagine how the Virgin Mary felt about her Jesus. This is what Malcolm was to me. Each step that he grew, each time that the changes came, I could feel them and see them. I could see them in his manner, his approach to me, his respect for me. Malcolm had a great respect for womanhood. I don't know how he came by this, but possibly, as I said, from our tribe. Maybe this was a virtue that most men don't have, but he had it. A great respect for womanhood. See, Malcolm made every sacrifice that I don't know any other man who made these sacrifices. Malcolm made every sacrifice to make himself whole, a man, worthy of saying to you, do something about yourself, young lady. Or saying to a young man, get up and take your bed and walk. This is how Malcolm affected me. This is how I saw him.
Was Malcolm searching when he went abroad, traveled abroad for the period of time?
Yes. This is why I say he was ready. Malcolm broadened his scope. Much of what he learned abroad gave him a mature approach to the black man's problem. Before, he had much frustration. In the Nation of Islam, there is much frustration. Malcolm had acquired some of this frustration. On his return from Africa, after traveling and spending time with all of the black leaders and revolutionary leaders, Malcolm came home a man. No frustrations, no emotional problems, no desire for material gains, which is one of the greatest assets a man can acquire, is to lose that desire for material gains, lose that value on that man's dollar. Malcolm had to cast aside all of this. He walked into my house. He told me he was going to speak at Harvard that night. He spoke at Harvard Law Forum. After he came back to the house, I gave him a diploma. Tonight, Malcolm, you're a man. From my point of view. He said, I traveled hard, didn't I? I said, yes, you did, but you made it. You're a man. He was ready.
Do you think the program that he was developing would have led black people out of their bondage?
You needed that. I know you needed that.
She got it. Good morning. During the month of May, many people will commemorate the birthday of Malcolm X. In the years since his life was ended by an assassin's bullets, his image has become even more powerful than it was when he was alive. In honor of Malcolm's birthday this morning, we bring you an encore presentation of our Emmy Award-winning program, an interview with the person who knew him best, his eldest daughter, Atala Shabaz, who was there when he was killed.
When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever is necessary to get that criminal off my back. Can't do anything by legislation. It takes education. The white man in this country needs to be re-educated so that his behavior pattern toward non-whites will change. And the black man in this country also needs to be re-educated so our behavior pattern and attitudes toward ourselves would be.
Malcolm X, a Muslim, a martyr, a man once willing to right a wrong by any means necessary. He later altered his views on how to achieve racial equality. Today on Bay Sunday, get to know Malcolm X through the eyes of his oldest daughter, Ms. Atala Shabaz. Good morning. Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm Barbara Rogers. This morning, we're on location with a very special guest, Ms. Atala Shabaz, the daughter of Malcolm X. What was it like growing up as the daughter of Malcolm X with with everything that went with that in terms of what people thought about him, both the good and the bad? Respond to being the daughter of Malcolm X as perceived by someone else. That I didn't know how to do that. So being the daughter of Daddy was easy. You know, my father was my friend and quite paternal, but also a buddy. So I was not encumbered or didn't permit myself to be encumbered by what the neighbors thought. What do you remember most about him? I meant remember much about him. I think one of the things that is consistent. What was a day like with him when you were a child? Well, it varied on what the day was. All of it seemed normal to me. So someone else would think it's a separate or a poignant thing. For me, it was a rhythm that was very natural. Where I hear that children can refer to parts of their childhood and feel resentment that their parent wasn't home. I don't recall feeling any resentment. When your parent presents their life, your life to you as if it is normal, hence wonderful as it is. I missed Daddy when he was gone. I missed Mommy when she was gone. When he was abroad, he was still present because he would write letters and treasure map kind of expeditions for us to hop one time, turn around, look underneath, turn over, and you'd stumble across something left there. It was wonderful. When you were young, did you have the sense that he was famous or that of the importance of what he was doing? No, not the importance in the way that I know it and understand importance now. I didn't know what you thought about him. I hadn't given concern to what another person thought. I knew that people responded to him. All the brothers from the temple came over. Suddenly children should be seen and not heard. That's different. Because my household wasn't like that. I speak to people who grew up in that organization, children who grew up in that organization, and they were rigid households. There were rules. And yours wasn't rigid? No. There was always a heartbeat. We could laugh in my house. And I listened to people who assumed that my father's house would have been much stricter because he was a loyal, dedicated servant of the Nation of Islam. No, we laughed a lot on the floor. You make it sound as though there was a lot of sort of roughhousing and I get this image of you being tickled by him. In fact. Forever. And him tickled by us. And my parents romantic in their presentation and demonstration. You know, him falling asleep with his head on her lap while, you know, gentleness, camaraderie, friendship. I didn't know until I was 19 that there were rules, expectations of what a man is to do and what a woman is to do. I saw strength and vulnerability in them both. When you began to realize that there was a different image of him that the world had, how did you deal with that? They didn't know who I knew. Simple as that. But did it hurt at all to hear people say things that were negative? No, because I knew they didn't know him. I knew specifically that was an assessment made from limited information. You didn't know him like I knew him. There are two, of course, tragic incidents in which it totally intruded and changed your life forever. Let's talk first of all about the bombing. Do you remember that? Certainly. What do you remember? Well, I remember the chaos. So it was February 14th, winter in Queens, New York. We were in the driveway of the house as all the mayhem was being dealt with, taken to friends' homes where we stayed for a number of months. What did your parents tell you after? Well, there were things going on beforehand. You know, you knew that friends who were once in your life were no longer friends. That was clear. The house surroundings, we were being stalked. People that you once recognized as comrades were now in cars around the corner, up the block, in front of the house, passing by, looking at you differently, not even giving a greeting. And I heard my husband say, everything is all right, everything is all right. Or so that was seated in about the third row.
Yes, I do believe there'll be further attempts on my life. I know them. They're foaming at the mouth. The rank and file Muslim means well. It's those at the hierarchy who are living off the fatted calf who don't mean well.
And then there was that other February day. Tell me about that. Well, it was not regular that at this point that we attended fairs where my father was speaking. And now that we were living with a family that was already close with us, There's a different kind of jovialness that kept us busy as children. And that Sunday morning, my father called and invited us to come, which I thought was odd. Again, for a child, you respond to the rhythm. And that was a different beat. My mother was happy, and of course, we're all excitedly getting dressed to go see Daddy. And while people feel that perhaps children don't sense or understand, because of what I can recall, as if it is yesterday, I don't put anything past children. I don't do or say anything around children. Things that I don't want them to remember. And we got there. We got there before he did. And there was some concern because my father was a stickler for time. And he came 40 to 45 minutes late. And I remember when he walked in, we said, there he is, there. And I heard my mother say, there's my husband. And she's always said that. I mean, she says it the same way now, with such coup, you know. Pride. Well, pride, yes, but it's more like that cooey kind. It's different. Love. Yeah, mushy love. I mean, like all the way love. That surrendering love. And she said, there's my husband. And he went backstage to the green room.
If you ain't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe. And let me know in the comments you subscribe. The first one who say I subscribe, you gonna get something. You gonna get something from Road to Williams. Just know. Let me turn up the one or the heater. Putting on Love Jones, so you can hear the love through these words, like I'm doing to the beat. I just want you to feel how I feel. Yeah. Can we feel the same? How big? Yeah, yeah.